All right, so thanks everyone for joining. My name is Wes McGrail. I'm the product analyst for EnerGov Citizen Self-Service, and this is a demonstration of new features that we're adding in 2018.3, including the administrative parts of that. So with that, I'll go ahead and share my screen. And if anybody can't see it, please let me know. All right, so we're going to start off with the new CSS welcome page. This page is replacing the existing CSS default screen. Looks very different, as you can tell. It's almost completely configurable, though. The first point I want to make, though, is if you've already gone in and used the themes and created your own welcome page, this isn't going to override that in any case. This would just simply override the existing CSS page if you're using that. Or if you want to switch to using this, if you're using something custom now, you just have to remove the code and the themes, and this would start working for you. So as you can see, we've changed it over to having a kind of card layout here. The card layout can be anywhere from 4 to 9 cards. And right from here, I'm not logged into the site. I'm still listed over here as a guest. This view pretty much remains the same whether or not you are authenticated or if you're not authenticated. And each one of these cards is customizable. You can select a existing card or one that we've pre-created for you, or create your own completely customized cards. From here, I'm going to go ahead and log in. And the one thing I wanted to kind of showcase was that there's a little bit of extra we put in around the pre-created login card. Once you've authenticated yourself, or if you come to it and you're already logged in, then it's going to be a My Account card. Options that are here, there's quite a few of them. I'm not going to go over every single one. You'll have actually probably a better view of what's available inside of our admin screen. But just kind of note that the background image, you can set that. The background color, you can set that as well. And options as far as clicking on a card, going into the site, clicking on it, maybe taking you to a new window, all that's, again, configurable. So that's this in a nutshell. I'm going to show you the admin side of it now. Now, one thing that we're making a conscious effort of is to kind of improve the admin site. And this is kind of the first real good example of that. Sometimes, it can be a little bit tricky to navigate around in this. Some of the screens are a little harder to follow than others. So we try to make this as easy as possible to use. So under themes now, there's a welcome page option. And you can kind of notice right away that you get essentially a preview of what it's going to look like here in the admin screen. We have the 3 different layouts that you can choose. So if we do a 2x3, you would get 6 cards. 2x2 breaks it down into, oh, look at that. Breaks it down into 4. When it's 4, it'll actually expand a little bit on the actual self-service. And again, this isn't exact. It's pretty much just a good estimate of what it's going to look like. You can put in a header. Hello.
Do you have a place where I can get to the source code for like the header image? Or not? The
header image, this kind of like ocean view that you're looking at right here. That right now is simply an image that you can post anywhere on your network, and then you just put the URL to it. So you can make it whatever you want, but there isn't any type of source code available in this.
Okay, thank you.
So from here, as you can see, we just have welcome to Citizen Self-Service. We give you a couple of options for the color. That's because if you put an image back there, you want to make sure you have some sort of a contrasting font. You can give it a border. One thing I'll mention just specifically in this is that there are some older browsers where the border doesn't actually show up. So if you ever notice it's missing, we're aware that it's just not supported in like older versions of IE, but Chrome, Firefox, Edge, they'll support it just fine. Again, you can select both a border color, text color. You turn this off, you'll see what it can look like. Down on the cards, they're all pretty. We think that it's pretty easy to come here and see what you're doing when you change things. We have these already created cards, like the login that I had mentioned. You can have a map. You can put them whatever order you want, obviously. If I were to come in and say, hey, pay invoice here, the little icon, the title, that's set. However, you can still come in and change the description that's associated with this tile. If you make a change, it's going to be just for that particular one. It's not actually going to go and change the default. So every time you would come in and maybe you decide you want to put pay invoice down over here, it'll have the default description again, but once again, you'll be able to modify it. So for example, in the application, by default, it lists that you can apply for a permit, plan, or a license. Well, if you're not using plans or if you're not using licenses, you can modify this and remove that, change the description however you want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of refresh this back to where it was. And again, just kind of show you how you can see the changes. And then we'll say the pay invoice, we're going to use the second one of the calendar. Hit save. Refreshing our screen. You see the changes take place right away. Finally, just kind of covering the custom options. If you select custom here, you get to pick your icon. Just kind of named it the best we could. You get a little preview of what it's going to look like. Perhaps you want to have some kind of an advertisement for a city function. Maybe you have a meeting that's you're invited a lot of contractors to come and discuss things. You could post something like that. And then you can put any kind of URL in here. It'll take a regular HTTPS kind of address, or if you want, you can, if it's a page inside of CSS, you could just get the route as it shows kind of here, permit apply. So if you maybe had a specific kind of link inside of it, you could permit and then apply, and then you could say 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it might be, whatever that permit number would be, and that link would take you directly to it. Again, in this case, you can add that. We'll set that we're going to open in a new tab, save it. And now that quote contractor meeting that I set up, oh, I forgot the HTTP part, so I thought it was a route. Essentially, it would have opened up and gone into whatever site that you put in. So this is the, oh, I'm sorry. Wanted to cover one more thing. It's the background. You've got the option to pick a color for this. By default, it kind of goes to this very light gray. The background image itself, like I mentioned, that's just going to be a URL. You can host that image wherever you want. We have a recommendation for it. Should be able to click this little eye here and have it post up. It's we have a recommendation of 1920 in width at the very minimum, and the recommended height is 250 pixels, and that's to give you the kind of this banner image that you see here. If you want to do something else, you can fill the whole page up with an image if you'd like to, but the recommendation that we have from our quote UI experts would be those types of dimensions that are here, and we have that documented. All right, again, Going to try to move quickly through this. A couple of features to kind of discuss while we're here. On our map, run a little search here. There aren't any records currently, but now in .3, the requests, citizen requests and code cases are available in the map. It is configurable in administration to not return these, but again, if you have them, they'll be there in .3. All right, the next thing that I kind of want to go over, I'm going to kind of use the search to highlight this, is the license module, kind of generally speaking. We got some feedback from a lot of people, and they all kind of agreed that for a citizen, the difference between a professional license and a business license is kind of meaningless. So throughout the site, we have combined the licenses together. So now instead of it saying, search for business license, search for professional license, it's just going to say license. Some of the fields that are on here are only for the business license. Some of them are only for the professional license. So when you put a search in this, it's actually going to search between the two modules. The parts that are only for one of them is, of course, only going to be searching those particular types of licenses. But the search results also are going to come back in a combination of them. We feel that's much less confusing for the citizen. All right, so now we're going to move on to our new apply process. One thing that you'll be able to notice pretty quick is that the apply here, it does not have a drop down when I go to click on it. That's something that you can configure. You can keep the existing drop down if you want. Now it's optional that you just have a singular apply button. So you can access it here. We also have, of course, I think I changed that one, the apply option right here from the home menu. Oh, and another thing to mention, the welcome page. Previously, once someone had logged in, that page would go away. We feel because of the number of options that are provided here that it might be helpful to keep it even after you've logged in. So again, that's why we have the My Account here, and it'll continue to show up even after you've authenticated. So clicking on Apply, this is our new, what we're calling Application Assistant. It started with the fact that we had a permit all area and a plan all area that were permit application assistant, plan application assistant, and so on. What we're doing with this is we've taken everything and kind of combined it together. We recognize that someone may not know if what they need is a license or if what they need is a permit, depending on who it is. Contractors are going to know, but your average homeowner might not necessarily know which one they're going to be applying for. So we try to give them a place to come in for all types of applications, at least starting. So here we have highlighted trending. That's the default option. And what this will do is look in EnerGov and find all the types of applications that can be applied for online, and then which ones have been applied for, or at least created, the most in the last 30 days. And it kind of displays them in the order of highest to lowest in here. So an example, if you have a peddler's license that maybe very rarely would get utilized, but you have a large sporting event coming to town and everyone needs to get one of these licenses to be able to sell outside the stadium or on the sidewalks nearby. Several of them will start to come in a short period of time. It'll probably start moving up and eventually be at the top there for probably that month that event's going on. So they would come to the see trending, and that peddler's license could be right here at the very top. It's going to show the top 10. We have actually a little less in this environment that's been applied for in the last 30 days, so that's all we have here. But yeah, get the top 10. There you can hit all, and all is going to give you everything. This would be a combination of permit, plan, license. Its usage is a little more limited, but it's primarily there for when we run our search. But I just kind of wanted to start off by showing it. And then we have our categories here. These should look familiar to you. They are the ones that are in our, similar to the old permit application assistant, plan application assistant. And someone can come through this way to find a specific category that they're looking for. Other options would be to come directly maybe to plans. As you can see, it sticks with you over here on the side. You can go to licenses and so on. Finally, we have our search, and this is kind of the whole point of this application assistant page is once you come to the page, you don't know what you're looking for. Like I said, an average citizen, perhaps I need to find a garage sale permit, or maybe it's a garage sale license. Do I need an alcohol service permit or license? So it's going to search across all the different applications in both license, permits, plans. So just to make sure, I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page.
Wes,
hello.
Where are you getting the keywords for this searching? Is this something we're setting up?
Yes. If you give me just 1 second, as soon as I go to the admin settings, I will cover that for you.
Sure.
All right, so we've got, I'm going to put in a search in for food. So notice that we have a name that it already knows exists, so it's kind of giving me that option. I can hit that by itself, or I can just run a search with the word food, and it's going to show up for me. Oops, actually I meant to do just food. Make sure I don't select it. There we go. So these two fell under food service. That's the category. So it's found these two options for me. Now, alternatively, maybe I'm opening up a restaurant and I don't know that it's called a food service permit. So I ran this search and I still got back these results. We have restaurants sitting here in this description, so it found it here. But if you notice in the food service license, the description doesn't specifically spell out the fact that there's a restaurant. So with that, let me come over here back to our little admin site. And I'm going to go into our case types. So here we have our food service. And for this case, we're going to come on down here and we'll notice that we have this new tags down at the bottom. Tags are where you can put in your keywords. And these would be something that doesn't appear in that name, in the category, in the description, something that you think people might search for or be looking for kind of like a synonym for something else that you've put in there. Now, I could have just as easily said in the description of this permit is good for someone opening a restaurant, for example. But this is just one time when it wasn't there. We want people to be able to search for it. So you just put a tag in and then it'll find these tags that are associated with it. Other options might be, let's say that you have contractors familiar with the same form that they've been using for 20 years. You have form like XR3, and that's their the building permit form they need for a basement. You could come into the basement permit and just type XR3 as a tag, and I'm going to hit enter, and it's saved, and now it's a new tag. And if they come in here and they look for it, they can just type in that word that they're familiar with, and it would return, and then they'd be able to read the description and say, okay, yeah, this is the one that I'm looking for. And you wouldn't necessarily expose these kind of more back office terms to someone that doesn't necessarily need to be able to read that. Like, it might confuse your average user, but you want someone else to be able to find it. Once you've added a tag, it gets saved into the database and it's available elsewhere. So the next time if I go to a different case type, if I hit X, they would get this little list that appears here would show anything that includes the X, and this would probably be the top of the list there. So it makes it kind of easy to add them across several of them. If you have some long terminology that's put in there, you just have to type the first couple of letters and it'll be included. For example, like certificate of occupancy. Maybe someone's looking for that, again, because they're opening up a business. Now, we pre-populated our list with about about 100 tags. These are coming from a large amount of data that we comb through to find consistently used words in the back office categories or case types and classes. So we kind of hope that that helps with that. But again, you can kind of add your own as you go through it. Let's see. All right, so just before, since we're already in here, before we can move into the actual application, parts that I want to cover, we previously had just attachment instructions. Now we have attachments for all the different steps. Location instructions, basic info, contact, and the more info step. So when I come back over into CSS, we'll get to see how those show. All right, so similar to how it is now in attachments, we've got the, all right, we're in the business license application process now. I should clarify that. This is where the experience is slightly different than it was before. All right, so probably everyone's somewhat familiar with the business license process. If you're not, hopefully this isn't too difficult to follow. Let me know if you have any questions. So in EnerGov right now, there is kind of a three-step process for a new business license. You have to create a contact that's a company, and then that company gets added to a business, and that business record is added to the license. It's kind of cumbersome, and we're working to improve that, especially with the new business license application, the HTML5 app, and we're kind of trying to follow suit here. So we've done our best to make the entire process a single flow, as opposed to having someone go and have to go through all these different steps. So when you first go and you're applying for a business license, this is the first kind of step zero that someone will see. Here they get to select any business that they already have their name associated with. So if you have 3 different businesses underneath that you're currently a contact on, those 3 will show. You can select the ones that are there. Some of the information from that business gets carried over into the license application. I'll cover that in just a second. Or you can select to create a new business during the application. Obviously, if you don't have a business associated with your contact at the time of starting, all you're going to have is just this create new business during the application step. All right, so I'm going to select this existing business that I have. And this is the part about the instructions I was mentioning, where this is the same as it is in the attachments in the current version you're on. This is what I typed in for my location instructions. As you can see, the location is already pre-populated because the business already had this location address on the business itself. So it's come through. I don't have to add it again. I can remove it if I want to and then add another location, but we're making sure that we try to include as much of the that pre-information that the customer might have to make this process as easy for them as possible. So from the location, the type, a little more information here than in some of the others. You get a read-only view of the business's information, and then you have the license details itself. The description, this is actually, I should point out, we are tightening up the last bit of stuff. We have a few bugs, so if something pops up, this isn't the completed one. This is one of the things we're changing. We brought the business description through, and it was determined that's not what we want. The description for the license will almost always be different from the business description. So you'd be able to come in here and you'd put in a description. And let's see here. We'll go ahead and give it a little bit of information to move on. Again, we have our contact instructions along the top, and all of these contacts were on the business. They've come over with the same contact type. Right now, we don't have an option for you to change the type, so if you wanted to change this from an owner to a manager, you have to remove them and then add them over again as a manager. But otherwise, this process is pretty much the same thing. You get to select the contact type, the existing ones in the business pre-populate for you. If you have requirements, if this license requires an owner, for example, then they're going to be required here as well. If maybe there's another option for CEO, and it would say this license type has a requirement for a CEO, there would actually be a card listed for them as well. It would pre-populate with these, but you would also say CEO is required, and it would make you fill it in before you continue, similar to the process that you should be familiar with now with permit, plan, and so forth. More information, not a whole lot here, but again, we have the instructions along the top. Attachments, same as it is now. This, of course, you can have required attachments during this process too, based on your configuration. All right, so a couple of changes here on our summary screen. Based on feedback, it no longer says summary. It actually says review and submit along the top. Try to help make sure that people don't get to this step and think, okay, I'm done. We've also added the submit button to the top of it. Location, unfortunately, I have just the location type here, but this is the same as contacts and attachments that I'll show you in a second. The location type will actually be listed here, so if this said billing, it would label it as billing. Down here in the contacts, we're going to remove this redundant word here, but the contacts actually are going to be listed as the owner, manager, owner, whatever the contact type was that was chosen during their step. It's no longer just going to be a generic contacts. Same with attachments. We have a redundant word we're going to remove, but the type that's listed will be there. That's especially useful with like the electronic plan review process for permit and plans. It's this summary change is across all the different modules, not just business license. All right, so continuing on, we'll submit this, and you'll see our little success page that we have here. All right, so between the time that someone finishes their application and the time that they actually get to see it, we're giving them this little splash page here. We know that there is a strong desire to have someone pay their fees before they actually get this information, and we are still looking into ways that we can make that happen. We have some plans, but we just haven't found a solution we're happy with yet. So this is kind of help with that too. Here you get the fees card that we'll see again in a minute, but you can put any message you want here in the success area. You can also modify these suggested applications down here, but again, kind of included in here upon payment of your fees, your license will be available for printing. So I apologize, in my little demo environment here, this one didn't have any fees associated with it, but maybe this would say $5, and I could click add to cart right here. If I needed to, I can hit view details, and in another tab, it would actually open up the invoice so I can see everything that's on it. But the intent is, put the fees front and center, so make sure that they pay anything that's been invoiced for, simple licenses, permits, or the same, or maybe application fees that are in the ones where you need to review it partially, but you want to get the application fees up front. So we hope that'll help with that. All right, again, you've got a configurable message here. You can set this per case type. It's not like you put it once for business license, that's all of them. Each one can be individualized, I guess. And then down below, we have our suggested applications. So in this case, I just did a food service license. I put in a couple of suggested applications. Perhaps you need a sidewalk obstruction permit. This would be for maybe you're inside of a city and you want to put out a couple tables and chairs out on the city sidewalk, and it's not much what you need a permit for that. Or if you're going to be servicing alcohol, maybe you need an additional license, then some businesses need that. So you can offer up these suggestions and they can go straight from here to begin the application process for those licenses or permits or plans as well. So bouncing back over to our admin page, as you can see, here's those different instructions. Here we have our success message based on, again, on the case type, and this is where the applications that you want to appear in the suggested applications can be entered. You can drop down, look through all of them here, or you can begin typing something in. And let's see here. So we have, commercial grading permit, and I could select this if I wanted to and have it get added to this list here. A couple other things I want to point out. These are specific to business license. We've got the show TIN and show tax ID field. It's a little harder to showcase this one because for it to show up, it's actually has to be a new business that's being created. By default, these are off. Every customer seems to have different uses for TIN or the tax ID. Some don't want to use it at all. Sometimes the social security number is recorded in it. So if you want them to show up during the application process, during a new business, because these are associated with the business, not the license, you can select these options. And then if you select the option here, it will use EnerGov's settings to determine whether or not it's a requirement that someone fills something in. Another thing to kind of point out, the only time that field shows up in CSS is during that application process. It'll show, you put in your TIN, because again, that could be someone's social. Once they put it in there and they've submitted it, it will essentially never show up in CSS again. It doesn't show up on their account page, their business page, anything. These are just for people that need to have that supplied at the time of the application. All right. Scrolling down on my notes, make sure I don't skip anything. Oh, I didn't want to go back. Let's go back over here. I apologize, I missed one little thing. So I'm not going to complete the whole process here, but actually, I did it again. It's a habit. All right, so we're going to add location here. Address information. So this is something we've kind of put everywhere. Anywhere there's an address field where you can insert one. We provided Esri suggestions. So if I was about to look for Margarita Avenue, for example, type in 120, then, oops, said one more. Margarita Avenue will fill in for me. Oh, you know what? I just finally noticed that the chat's been zooming through. I think. Okay, let me go back and answer some quick questions here. Tags, yes, the tags are specifically there for the search engine results. It's to, again, you don't actually see them in the description, but putting in those tags, like if I tagged the one with restaurant, and even though it didn't say it was a restaurant permit, by searching for restaurant, it was able to show it to me. Description box does not currently support HTML. That's one of our nice to haves, and we want to have it in there. Don't know when that could happen, but it's definitely like on our mind that we want to make it so each one of these boxes in that admin setting, description, instructions, it would be great if we could allow some sort of basic HTML in there. So hopefully in the future we'll have that, but right now it's really just straight up text. All right, so the search here has that for the address. If I come here into search as well, let's go here to a permit. And if I come to the address again, if I go to 230 Margarita Avenue, there it is. So hopefully this will help people when they, maybe if they're on West 51st Street and you're not sure if you should type a W beginning or WST, WEST. There's a space between 51 and ST, and everyone's addresses are a little bit different, and so if you don't put it in quite the right way, it has a much harder time finding it. So hopefully that'll help with the citizens being able to find that address easier. All right. Yes. All right, back over to the admin. This is an important setting. All right, let's go to manage case type. We're going to select a permit. All right. So we've added an option for disallow attachment uploads after application. CSS has always kind of had it as a feature that you can upload attachments on a completed record. And with the electronic plan reviews coming in play and the fact that we've taken those and kind of combined them with attachments, so it's easier for the citizen, and they don't have to worry about where is my attachment in the process. I got to find it in the right place. So we kind of combine them all together, and kind of a result of that is that now when someone goes through that e-review process, the e-reviews are getting locked down, but they're still able to upload attachments. This is for people that are using kind of a combined e-reviews where they still are maybe on Silverlight or they can't use file sets. This would be like in the LTR. Anytime where you have some files going to e-reviews and some files going to attachments, that attachment option is still there. So it was a little bit confusing to see that you can still upload an attachment even if it wasn't going into electronic plan reviews. So we went ahead and made just a simple little checkbox here. If you check this, once you go through the application process and you go into that record, the only types of files you'll be able to upload would be e-review files. And that's going to be controlled by either review coordinator or the e-review project file project inside of EnerGov Silverlight. So you just use the settings there, and it'll still allow people to upload new files if you set it and such. But as far as just the attachments, it'll lock that down from them. All right, now next big one is going to be our summary page. Let's see here. Record that I want to showcase. All right, so here we have a permit, and right away you can see some of the new things that are on it. Our summary tab is the default tab for permits and plans, and at a glance you can see all the new features. This is the same fees card that's in the success page. So that's where I mentioned that you'd see it again. We essentially use the same thing. You can see that there's a progress. This is essentially the workflow progress, how much of it has been completed, how much of it is still being worked on. The workflow itself will kind of give somebody a timeline where the completed items are going to appear at the top, and that's actually going to kind of mix the failed and the passed items together. That's everything that's actually finished. And then next, you'll see everything that is started in EnerGov. And if it's something that actually has some kind of a date around it, like a hearing or an inspection, a meeting, we'll say the date that it's actually scheduled for. And then if it's one of those steps where maybe it starts at some point, doesn't really have any dates associated with it, maybe like a task, whatever it might be. If you happen to have one of those, then it will simply just say started and won't have a date associated with it. Now, for this, I have a couple things to show. Here's this record in EnerGov itself, and you can see the parts that have been completed, that's failed, that's been started again, another one that's been started, and it's a little bit different compared to what the customer sees, because the customer, again, we kind of want to give them that timeline look to it. Once you get through anything that's been scheduled, anything that's been started, then we try to have an order that is the same as what you would see as far as sorting and priorities. So, for example, in this case, earlier today I came in and made a change to this where I reordered the workflow, and I put the certificate of occupancy as 15, and then the final inspection is 14. They were kind of like in the middle here because everything is set to 0, 0. So that's complete. So once I added that and they changed them to be down here at the bottom of the EnerGov workflow, then that changed it in here as well. So we can scroll down and we see this was the list of inspections at the bottom there, and then we have the certificate of occupancy. Also, we have our actions. The actions are, if you have fees, if you have like an unpaid invoice, then you'll see that. Kind of have that all over the place, but just one more place for it. This indicates that we have a file that needs to be resubmitted. That's again coming over here to back to this record, the e-review projects. We're ready for this particular file to be re-uploaded. So we can kind of go directly to the attachments from this link here. Other things that could show, and I tried to get it set up for this meeting, but unfortunately the templates that were for this record didn't quite make this easy on me. If you have a failed inspection that you can reschedule, you'll see a reschedule option here. Again, that'll be in red. If you have maybe optional inspections that you can request, or if even if they're not optional, but any inspection that you can currently request, will actually list it over here in the actions as well. That one would come in as kind of a blue color like the rest of it, and wouldn't have this necessarily little icon next to it. It has like a calendar icon, and you can hit schedule straight from here. Other things to note, obviously we have these little indicators. So we have a failed inspection, it's listed. We've got fees that are due, and then under the attachments we have the file that needs to be resubmitted. Another would be if the latest submittal had been failed and we haven't started the next version of it, then there would be an icon here for reviews as well. So it just kind of lets people know the parts that need attention, so to speak. Oh, and of course you can see that the top up here was collapsed. When we were talking to people, most of this information is not what the quote contractor is going to be looking for. We just wanted to get them the status, because that matters, the project, so they know they're looking at the right thing. And then we just really wanted to let them see this summary as soon as they get into the page. All right, so settings around our summary here, back over in admin. So here you can see a lot of stuff. This is the workflow. And let's make sure I'm in the right one. All right, let's go to commercial building. All right, actually, let me back up. Let me just kind of show you this so it doesn't surprise you. If I come in here to add, and I go to add a permit, and I'm just gonna throw in anything real quick. You'll notice that this information is actually missing at the bottom. Once the record is saved and it can use this typing class, then the workflow will actually just kind of appear down below. So the first time you have to hit save, new stuff will add, and then you can kind of continue on from there. So let's go into building. All right, so yeah, there's the workflow. A lot of information in it. Obviously, we don't show all this, but it's included so that you can tell what step you're working with. And keep in mind the one that I was showing you in EnerGov, I rearranged it. This is the default order. Like again, this is just test data, so to speak. The certificate of occupancy was sitting at the top. It was a little unusual, but anyhow, every action is listed here. It'll give you the step name, the action name, obviously the description. If it's optional, it'll list it. And then you have the option to either hide it or change the name of it. So let's say that you have a surprise inspection that's been added to somebody, and you never are going to want that surprise inspection to show up in that workflow before it actually happens. So you could come in here, and if it said surprise inspection, for example, you could just hit hide, and then it's not going to show for them at all. So let's see if I can find an example here. We'll do certificate of occupancy. We'll just say we want to call it issue COO. And so I'll save that and come back over into here, refresh. Now if we scroll down, instead of it saying certificate of occupancy, now it'll just say issue COO. So if you have actions that wouldn't make any sense to somebody, but you still would like them to be able to see it, you can go in and kind of give it its own name. They say electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and it has non-residential new. Maybe for this citizen, you don't feel they need to see this. You can just give it the electrical, mechanical, plumbing, maybe add the word inspection behind it, or permit is what's needed. But regardless, we try to give you as much flexibility with this as you can, so that only what you want to be seen is what's actually seen here. One thing I will mention, though, specifically about that, if for some reason you have a workflow, say with 4 items, and you hide one of them, the customer's only going to see 3 here. It may not have the perfect progress in a situation like that. Reason being is this progress indicator is the exact same progress as you would find in the new managed permit or managed plan application. If you go to the summary there and there's a percentage, we wanted to make sure that we showed the exact same thing that the back office did, so that if contractor calls in and says, how far along am I on this? And someone says, well, I see you're 76% of the way through. We didn't want them to come here and see a different percentage. So this progress is indicative of the actual progress, not this workflow progress. I'll point out to you, this little word "do" here is a bug that we're aware of and will not make it out when it actually gets released. All right. I think that's everything that I have planned to show. Got through it just a little bit faster than I thought. So I will go ahead and open it up now to anyone that has questions or would like to see something a little slower or see it again. Okay, contacts. Can case contacts change who the billing is? Not yet, no. Actually, I'll cover something about that though. So in admin, we have a system setting, invoice payment, pay invoices while not logged in, pay invoice when not a contact. So the initial purpose of these settings was around the anonymous invoice pay, being able to come to a pay invoice at the top, type in an invoice number, and you can make that payment. We are taking these fields here, and they now are honored throughout CSS. So for all those times you have someone that says, my name is the one that's on this permit, I'm the billing contact, but I want my administrative assistant or I want my accounts receivable to be the ones that actually get to go out there and make these payments. If you have these settings checked, they will have those options directly from the record, as opposed to having to go and manually search for that invoice. I'll give you an example here. So you say I'm currently logged in. Go ahead and log out. Go back to that page. Go back to the page. Let's just go to search, and then I'll search it again. All right. And all right. Well, it's missing. Oh, wait. Hold on. Let me check one more setting. Dun, dun, dun. Oops. Okay, so fees are set right now to only a case contact being able to see them. If I will allow all users, again, this is someone who's not logged in at all. Let's refresh. Okay, so if someone is not authenticated, they don't have access to any cart whatsoever. So we can't give them the option to add to cart. We can't give them, which is up here at the top, which is what you would normally use to pay. But the actions, we're putting that out different so that they are per invoice. So if you have 3 invoices that are unpaid on this record, each one would be able to be paid. And I can click Pay Now, and it takes me straight into the invoice. And this is essentially the same thing as coming to Pay Invoice and putting in this number, finding it, and then moving forward. But instead of having to list somebody, hey, go in and pay invoice 623 and 741, you just say, go and grab these permits. You have the list of what they are, and straight from there, they can hit that payment option. Now, if I am not billing contact but am logged into it, and those options are set so that a non-case contact can pay. Let's go back. So if we have pay invoices when not a contact, that will actually, in this case, override the billing contact necessity of it. So I'm logged in if Jane R. Smith up here at the top isn't actually a contact, or if I wasn't the billing contact, then I would still be able to pay this by hitting the add to cart or that pay now option. Add to cart is there because I have a cart now and I can actually utilize it, or I can come in and hit that pay now, as I mentioned before, and it's kind of the same thing. It's like being able to take care of it anonymously. So we did get a lot of complaints about that, about having only one person being able to pay this. So as kind of a stopgap until we can put in a little bit better stuff around subcontext and that sort of thing, we made that functionality site-wide. Does that cover the question? All right. Do we have anything else? Any other questions? Anything you'd like to see? I know I went through that pretty quickly. Registration predirection. During a manual address entry, the predirection and also suite apartment number fields are not there. Quite frankly, I think it just got missed at some point, and we have taken note of that. It is something we are going to fix. It is just, it didn't make it into this release. One thing too, this release is essentially a double release, you could say. We put more or less two into one. The business license wasn't quite ready to be released when we had it finished, so to speak. And so since we couldn't release without EnerGov, we went ahead and just started on the next one. So this is fairly big as far as the feature list is concerned.
When will this be available?
That's always the question. So right now we are going through our internal testing. We are just hammering it, trying to find every little thing we can that's wrong. We're building up a list of those tiny little things that need to be fixed. Like I said, like you have do here, then it's not supposed to be there. So we are getting those kind of worked out. And as soon as we're done, it's ready to go. We're not adding any more features to it. Everything is more or less finished except for those little fixes that we're finding. I'd love to tell you it's for sure next week. Really would. We hope that it is, but of course we could always find a critical issue. So don't quote me on that, but really, like I said, no more features are getting added to it. It's all about just making sure that when it goes out, we don't run into issues. Any thoughts about changing the tab name, more info, something like application? We have not had any discussions about more info being changed yet. That doesn't mean it's not something we could discuss. Well, if there's no other questions, I'll go ahead and I'll finish this up. I will say that I really appreciate everyone's time. I hope this works well for you. We're all pretty excited for this. We think there's a lot of features that the customers will be happy with. If you had a question or a comment that you didn't get a chance to bring up, need any more information on something, feel free to shoot me an email anytime. Happily respond. I will go ahead and be stopping the recording soon. I will get it out there. I'm not sure where it's going to be. We recently had a change in where we're storing some of our files, so I can't tell you where it'll be right now. But once I get it out there, I'll make sure I send out its location to everyone in case you wanted to review anything. And of course, if you saw something and you want to make a suggestion on it or comment on it, I would love to see that too. So with that, I thank everybody very much. I hope you enjoy it when we come out, and we'll make sure we keep the communication lines open so you know as soon as this is ready for you.